Last week, on sailing Classea, I confessed what it was really like to be a liveaboard sometimes.
But we only have, 500 square feet or less of living space. It's hard to work around sometimes, and it's not always going to be equally crisp.
We also took Classea on her maiden voyage out in Raritan Bay. But we had some trouble when we tried to anchor her at night.
Describe your first night at anchor.
It was a little rough. Kept getting broadsided by the swell, so it was very rolly.
We still managed to have a great time while we were out, though.
Part of this week's task was to figure out why the windlass had seized up on us, and so we took apart the windlass piece by piece and took them all out. I had already taken the chain off the gypsy to pull the gypsy off and just tied it around the base. After dismantling everything, we took an inventory of the things we were missing. It didn't look this good. This took about a day's worth of soaking in vinegar and then a lot of scrubbing and brushing with a wire brush to get it this good. Pretty much everything looked like that. Rusted through, 17 years of corrosion. But other than that, once we got it cleaned up, it was pretty nice. So the first thing to jump out was we were missing some bearings. These are the bearings here. They go inside the base to hold the shaft in place. Then you have a C-clip here and a C-clip here to keep it from riding up and down. This C-clip that's all rusted is the one on top. I was lucky to get that out because it was very stuck in there. But everything else looks good. The gearbox came out fairly easy. Just had, all the paint is gone off the gearbox. The motor still works. We used the car battery to test the positive and negative in both directions, so it actually spins, and the gearbox works as well. So this was our biggest problem and what needs to get fixed, but not sure what we're going to do about that. Right here, I don't know if you can see this piece here is all chewed up. It looks like it's a lot of damage. There wasn't even like bearings or anything. The only thing we could find was the outside wall, which is attached to the base. But everything else looked okay. And what we found doing research was that this company has gone out of business, so there's no replacement parts. I took the shaft over to a machinist to see what he could do about it, see if we could actually, turn it down and make new bearings for it. So it was going to cost about $150 to weld it, and basically what they were going to do is weld all the way around here and kind of build up the diameter a good, couple millimeters. That way they could re-mill it and it would be back to specifications. So it was $150 just to do that, and then another $100 to bang out the old bearing wall to even get the outside diameter needed to get new bearings. And so we were looking at $200 just for the labor before we even got new bearings. Another thing that we tested was the solenoid, because it wasn't turning over to get power. So it'd be another $150. So in total, we're looking at $350 to replace the bearings, redo the shaft, and replace the solenoid.
This week we spent a lot of time working on our priorities. Whenever you're on a limited budget, you kind of have to pick and choose what you want to actually spend money on. And also we had to, along with that, then figure out what's the most important to fix as well, because again, we only have a limited budget, and so we have to figure out what's most important and the price of each item.
You also have to consider time, because time to do all this is going to be a lot. So those kind of things we're looking at.
We made a key for the prices to help us figure out what we might want to purchase based on how many funds we had available. We can share that on the screen. And we realized that this is not split evenly, but it's also more of a way for us to better determine what we could buy. So generally we will have, less than $150, or $150 to $600 would be if we got, a big chunk of money available. And then greater than $1,000 is if we saved really, really hard. And so that was just the prices that fit our type of budgeting and financial situation or ability. The priorities that we decided, the first one was insurance.
And we went with insurance because up here it's actually very cheap. We only spend about $1,200 a year. And I know as soon as you hit Florida and Texas, because you're more prone to hurricanes, that number rises very quickly. And so insurance is our biggest priority, so that, if anything happens, and we're only covered up until, I think, Virginia. And so past Virginia, we'd be out of our coverage, and so we want to make sure we have coverage throughout the entire trip, just in case.
Mm-hmm. And along those lines, after insurance, we would like a ditch bag and an EPIRB. So the ditch bag will have supplies if we have to leave the ship suddenly. It has things like bags of water and MREs and flares.
We have a list of things that, like the VHF and stuff, that we're going to have to grab on the way out. But this bag will be prepared with
First
the
aid.
Necessities and stuff like that.
So we're making it for 4 people to last about 3 days.
Yeah,
and not comfortably, but we would survive.
It's just the 2 of us now, but if we do have more people, or if we're cruising with friends, then that's why we went with 4, just so that we always prepared with no matter what we can comfortably cruise with.
Yeah, and then the EPIRB sends out a signal telling people where to find you.
And that's just a necessity, so can't go offshore without it. And so it's definitely up there.
And that's part of the ditch bag as well. It's just a more expensive part of the ditch bag, so we added it separately.
Right.
And then after that would be a life raft, because along the same lines of, in case of an emergency, those are the absolute necessities.
All right, and the ditch bag is higher on our priority because we have a dinghy, so if we can't afford the life raft, we can always use the dinghy and have the ditch bag, and just throw the ditch bag in there and go if need be. And
the dinghy we keep inflated at all times at this point, since we don't have a life raft. So it is inflated, and it's on a quick release system that we designed on the top, on deck. So that if anything was happening, we just unhook it in 3 spots, we throw it overboard, and we jump on in. After the life raft is AIS.
And we did the AIS after the life raft because you can technically sail safely without it. It's kind of a convenience in that you can see and be seen. But we also have radar, which allows us to see what's ahead of us, and we also have a radar reflector, which allows us to be seen. And so we figured we have the minimum that would make it safe. So AIS is one of those that for us is more of a commodity that would help out, just an added benefit.
And then under that would be to fix our batteries and maybe get solar power. One of the reasons we have to stop so often, every couple of days, and have so many marinas on our trip is because we don't have an alternative energy source. Right now we just have batteries that the boat runs off of. And we only have 2, and they're not lithium, they're the acid batteries. So if we add solar, it would considerably reduce the cost of our trip. Also make it a little bit safer because then those batteries are charging and we won't run out on accident. Under the battery is fixing the autopilot. We don't think it'll cost a lot. So it's actually pretty high up on our list of what we need to fix. So we already have the autopilot, and it works whenever we're plugged into shore. But as far as it working when we're offshore, it just says not enough battery.
Yeah, we get a low battery warning.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of what's happening with our batteries as well, because as soon as we unplug, one of our batteries goes to 9 volts, but the other stays at 12, and we're not quite sure what's going on. So we have some looking into to figure out why, but I think those two are connected.
Mm-hmm. And then we have deck lights on our list after that. Just because we have deck lights, but it might be nice to upgrade them to brighter deck lights, or have red in the cockpit. Have red lights for night sailing.
Yeah.
Under that would be a second anchor and rode. Again, it's more of a safety feature, not something that is absolutely necessary to go out sailing. And we're not planning on anchoring while we're out. We're just going to sail from one marina to the next straight without stopping. And after that, we have foul weather gear. Again, we're mostly going to be watching the weather, so we hopefully don't get stuck in it.
It's more of a commodity because we have rain gear, we have sweaters, and we have stuff to keep us warm. So foul weather gear would be nice if we can get it at a reasonable price.
Mm-hmm. Under that would be fixing the windlass or purchasing a new windlass. We discussed a little bit earlier in the video about what the problem is. So it would be really nice if Martin didn't have to lift it up by hand. But he can because he's strong and handsome. So
And after that is we have an electric halyard winch. We have end-mast rolling, so we don't really need it. It's second to last on our list. And then lastly, we have, it's a luxury, just a fillet knife.
But we're probably going to buy it anyways because they're cheap.
Yeah,
They can be cheap.
We don't have one. We have a fixed list, which, I mean, it's just repetitive of what we did. We have to figure out why our battery isn't staying charged and just only discharging one of them. And then the autopilot, which might be because of the battery. And then we have to hook up the radar.
We already had it, but we moved it from below deck to on deck so that we can see it while we sail.
Yeah. And then we have a macerator we just need to install, but nobody wants to deal with that. So we're just holding off until the very end to replace the
macerator. Grinds up your waste after you use the toilet.
And then shoots it out.
Yeah, so you can only use it after you're 3 miles offshore anyway, so we haven't needed it here. Whenever we live aboard at the dock, we just have to pump out. So we just haven't needed the macerator, and we don't want to fix the macerator.
Yeah.
But we need to once we start sailing. And that was the list of our priorities. As a reminder, we have them up here, and that's what these pretty lists are. And every week we have a to-do list. These pink post-it notes over here are our to-do lists for each week that get changed up. So that is what we're going to be working on up until we leave in mid-October.
Yep. And then next week we'll update you on what we've accomplished this week, and just keep going until we get out of here. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for tagging along as we prep for our trip south.
And remember to go out, have your adventure, and stay classy.